You were the primary opportunity of caring for him as he was dealing with cancer. Can you share with us how your feelings and experiences sort of evolve, in the various stages of his illness?
Well, I remember when we, beginning of '82, when we went to the hospital for some tests, and we didn't know that it was the cancer that had come back. He was in pain, but we thought it might be due to something else, an old injury he'd had in the back and so on. And when we went to the doctor, and the doctor told him that the cancer had returned, and it was, by this time it had gone to the base of the spine, and this was a very serious, ominous moment. And I remember coming out of the hospital with him and suddenly realizing how different the world looked from an hour before when we got into the hospital. And everything was the same. The cars were going up and down the street, people were running around shopping and talking, but it was all different. You looked at it differently. And from that moment until he died, maybe until now too, in a sense, I look at life with that perspective, which death gives. And as you beautifully have said, and both of you have experienced, you also appreciate the good things, the gifts, the love and the friendships and the intimacies and so on. All of that becomes much more real and intensely present, because you know that it is framed now in a limited amount of time. And you always know that intellectually, but you don't feel it, of course, until it happens. And then I think, for me, with Father John, it was seeing him live the teaching, and with deep patience, continuing to be very caring for the community, and as it was a very young and fragile community, he didn't tell them immediately, of how short the time might be, because we didn't know. The doctors will never give you an exact, certainty about it. So we thought we would. People knew he had cancer, knew he was being treated, but so he was very caring for the community. He still spent time speaking with people and directing them, but I saw a very deep patience. And I remember when I went to see him, actually on the eve of his operation, first operation, or the only operation he had for the colon cancer, and realizing when I went into his room the night before the operation, what a profound peace he had found. And it was a joy. He was in a blissful state. And maybe that kind of state that we touch into in meditation rarely, but here he was in that state while he was sitting talking with me and with other people, and it was like being inside of his meditation almost, in a very intimate and then you realize, I suppose what I've learned from that is that what is within you is outside of you as well. And then that feeling became even stronger in the last months of his life, and especially in the last weeks of his life, when I would go and I was now running the monastery and running up and down stairs all the time, but making his care my first priority. And when I went into his room to sit with him, to talk with him, or just to be quietly with him, I would feel this intense peace and joy. It was as if something was happening. It was the life of God almost. It was something was happening at a very intense level of activity. and it was that kind of peace. It's not the peace of you're lying back and half asleep. This was the peace of tremendous, intense activity, but harmonious and loving. And he was at, like the epicenter of it. And so while I was with him, I felt very peaceful, and it was a grace to be in that presence. I think somebody who has found that within themselves becomes attractive, naturally. And when I left the room, then I would begin to feel anxiety again and be concerned about his suffering, or be concerned about the future, or being concerned about being alone to deal with these issues. But actually in his presence there was no fear.
Yes. He said to you, you will do what you have to do. I think that was some of the words that you heard from him during his illness. Can you recall from your memory what other things that he said to you which are significant in terms of teaching you about life, in terms of teaching you about meditation?
Well, he taught in many ways, of course, but mostly by example and by presence. He didn't. He had a very strong personality, but he didn't impose that personality on me or upon other people in the sense of telling you what to do. He would help you to see very clearly what was the right thing to do, but he didn't ever take away your freedom in any way. But at the same time, it was very clear when you were with him that you had choices, and you could make good choices or bad choices, truthful choices or untruthful. But I think that I remember once in the last phase of his life, when he was spending most of the time in bed, and he'd been alone for a while, and I went into his room, I think maybe just before I went to bed, and I got a terrible shock because he wasn't in the bed. And then an even greater shock when I saw he was on the floor. He'd fallen out of bed. And so, anyway. And having fallen, it's funny, time doesn't make much difference, does it?
Yep, I told you.
Did you help him back to the bed?
I did. Well, actually, yes, I think I did, and he was conscious. But as he had fallen, he'd cut himself a bit. Not very much, but he just hit his head. So I got him back into the bed, you see, and he was okay. And I said, "Never mind, we'll laugh about this later." So he said, "Well, why don't we laugh about it now?"
Yeah.
And then it was strange in the next few weeks before he died, because the cut on the skin of his forehead healed. So the body was healing, although it was also breaking down at the same time.